Hey guys, Nike here. In the most recent developer AMA after Flashpoint, Mike O'Brien made what I felt was a pretty heartfelt statement about the limits of paid advertising on a 5-year-old MMO, and he sort of put out the request to the Guild Wars 2 community to go ahead and do what you can to promote the game effectively to outsiders. I agree with that 100%. Most people watching this video probably love this game. Obviously, not everyone's going to like everything about everything, but overall, there's something about the game that everyone watching this video probably likes. That said, there are two types of love, and the first way is love the way a child loves its mommy, which is unconditional blind love. The second type is the way an adult should love his or her family, which is to say, they should love them, but also be conscious of their flaws and desire to help them improve. So before I get into criticisms, I want to talk about what ANET does really, really well. And that primarily, the best thing ANET does is that they are consistently amazing at art and art direction. Considering the size of their studio relative to, say, Blizzard's, ANET's art, sound, and design are absolutely amazing. The storytelling is vastly improved from what it was at launch, and the HOT and Season 3 story has been pretty much the best MMO storytelling in the business. So yeah, these are the things that ANET does extremely well. So let's get into the things that they do not so well, and I'm going to say that the thing that they're generally considered to be the worst at is game balance. ANET's track record on balance changes, specifically PvE balance, is pretty spotty. To give them full credit, the trajectory of the balance for the last year or so has been better and better. Despite the occasional mistakes, the general trend has been towards better and better PvE balance. And this is with a team half the size of the team as it was around the launch of HOT. And also, while the current team, despite its small size, is dedicating most of their time to the next expansion. A lot of posters on the forums and on Reddit have flamed them and accused the balance team of being bad at their jobs or ignorant and don't understand what the game needs. And I don't think either of those are true. As I said, the overall trajectory of PvE balance has been moving in a better direction pretty consistently. And I think it does need to be said that the times when they've done major revamps, it's obvious that when they've had the time to do that, the results have been great. When they revamped, for example, the Guardian, Scepter, and Sword, those were done extremely well, and they were well received, and they were exactly what was needed at the time. The Condi Rev revamp was really good. I think everyone would agree that the changes they made were excellent. The new Necro Elite Plaguelands, also really good. These things are not accidents. These are what you would get when you have the time and resources to do a job properly. But with that said, some of the changes, specifically the timing and the quality, have been really beguiling. The most recent balance patch is an example of a few pretty big misfires all happening at the same time. A lot of the changes that they did in this balance patch seemed like reactions to old issues that don't necessarily exist anymore. A perfect example of this would be the nerfing of the Condi Ranger, when Condi Thief was not only better than Condi Ranger, but received an additional buff. This struck me as a change that was based on data from 3 months ago, at the last balance patch, when no one was really using Condi Thief, but Condi Rangers were everywhere, and not data from 3 weeks ago, where most elite guilds and speed clear guilds would have told you that Condi Thief is an insanely powerful outlier, and Condi Ranger is not that special. Another misfire in the patch would be the whole fiasco with stacks of might being applied to the Sword Phantasm. Obviously, that's not a balance problem as much as it's just simply embarrassing and demonstrates a complete lack of thought going into a change. And finally, you have the changes that simply weren't tested thoroughly, like the epidemic change and the take root nerf. A balanced team that had adequate time and resources to test would have caught all the buggy issues with the new epidemic. A team which had plenty of time would have reviewed all the racial skills and nerfed all the racial skills that could be considered big DPS increases. They have said in the various AMAs that they are aware of the balance issues that are in the game. They have indicated that all the major problems and outliers are well known. The inability to fix these problems doesn't seem to be due to insufficient community feedback, insufficient data at their disposal, or insufficient statistics that they have access to. What all these misfires have in common is that they all seem to arise from a lack of time and resources. This balance patch felt rushed, and I don't think anyone could really argue that it wasn't. And this makes sense. There are 3 people on the balance team, and they have 9 new elite specializations to design and balance, as well as supporting the living story releases by designing new gliding skills and vine crawler masteries. They simply can't devote full-time attention to current balance issues with what they have allocated for it and deliver a AAA result. I think the onus should be on management to give them the resources to design a new X-Packs worth of elite specs and manage the live game at the same time without cutting into the time budget of either. And yet, this isn't happening. What's strange is that Mike O'Brien's position on patches is otherwise quite clear. Ship it when it's ready and not before it's ready. This has been stated numerous times in regards to content, but this ship it when it's ready policy doesn't appear to apply to balance patches. I don't presume to know exactly what Mo thinks about game balance, or if he really cares about it at all on a micro level, but in my opinion, I feel that he probably doesn't value it enough to give it the resources that it deserves. From a cash-driven management perspective, it's pretty hard to put a monetary value on good or bad balance patches. The reason for that is that most of the player base is, and I don't say this and I don't mean this in any insulting way, most of the player base are extreme casuals who barely notice balance patches unless it somehow renders their personal build unplayable. The more casual of a player you are, the less of a big deal balance patches are. And since these players are ANET's monetary based, it's hard to see a balance patch, either good or bad, really affecting the bottom line of the game. From that results-orientated viewpoint, balance patches only quote-unquote matter if they are such a colossal screw-up that the changes create massive player retention issues. But I think looking at it from that point of view does miss the boat. In regards to me, in regards to the people watching this video, in regards to the people commenting on the forums and on Reddit, and probably most of the people that read about the game on fan sites, we are the invested, conscious, and vocal player base. In absolute nominal terms, we might not spend as much money on gems as the thousands and thousands of casual whales, but as Mike O'Brien said, we are the ones that have the power to promote the game. As much as the casual whales aren't bothered by balance patches either way, the dedicated player base, the hardcore player base, is disproportionately bothered by balance patches. I've often remarked to my friends that to me, balance patches are content patches, and sometimes even more interesting to me than any living story patch could be. Your average casual might not even read balance patch notes, and they probably wouldn't notice a 5% change to a build's DPS, whether it was a nerf or a buff. But for players like me, and the players like you watching this video, the change of 5% in either direction is of enormous importance. This brings me to the trickle-down effect of these changes. Your average casual open-world Necromancer player might not be directly affected by balance changes to the raid meta. But if all he reads on the forums and Reddit is "lol necro sucks" over and over, and he sees in map chat "lol necro sucks," "necro sucks," "necro sucks," "necro sucks," it will affect his enjoyment of the game, and that is a player retention issue. This guy might not ever set foot in a raid, but the perception of the raid meta does trickle down to casual open world players. By the same token, how many threads do we see every week of a person saying on Reddit or the forums, hey, I'm new to the game and thinking of buying the game. I really like the look of Necromancer or Revenant. Should I play that? We see tons of those threads. It's a huge financial problem for ANET when the answer is, quote-unquote, no, lol, those suck. Even if you get a nuanced, accurate answer, it isn't what the answer should be. The answer should be yes, those classes are great, and you'll love playing them. So ANET management might or might not see the financial point in putting more resources into the skills team, but they should. The perception of good balance helps promote the game. It is very, very valuable for ANET that the perception of Guild Wars 2 on r/MMO is that Guild Wars 2 has great balance. Conversely, if the perception is that Guild Wars 2 has very poor balance, this is costly. The same function applies to content, even if only a small percentage of the community participates in raids or automated PvP tournaments. The existence of PvP tournaments and raids sells the game. When a person on r/MMO asks, quote-unquote, does Guild Wars 2 have a good PvE endgame? We can now answer yes. Yes, it does. 3 years ago, the answer was no. How many copies of the game went unsold because the answer was no, because the perception was no? Now that it's yes, they can sell copies of the game to those players. This is hugely valuable. Even if overall relatively few players raid regularly, the ability to answer the question yes is hugely valuable. Even if that new potential player asking about Guild Wars 2 endgame never actually sets foot in a raid once he buys the game, the fact is that the positive impression of Guild Wars 2 endgame is one of the factors that sold him on the game in the first place. The ability of Guild Wars 2 content creators to make content being proud of the game's balance sells the game and has a very real financial value. It's not even about the content creators even necessarily. It's the general community vibe. Imagine the difference in community perception after a balance patch where the QT benchmark post says, balance is great, all the professions are meta in raids on at least one build, and balance has never been in a better place than it is today, compared to WTF is ANET doing? They don't have any idea how much they messed up PvE with this patch. Which of these posts do you think ANET wants to see at the top of r/Guild Wars 2 for a week? Is there anyone who thinks that those posts don't have a financial impact? When a random person on r/MMO asks, does Guild Wars 2 have good balance? The answer to that question needs to be yes. The top upvoted answer needs to be yes, it does. If the answer is yes, it sells a lot of copies of HOT and whatever comes next. And that's why balance matters. Alright guys, thank you for watching this one. I know it's a long video. Please hit me up in the comments below if you have any questions, and I'm sure you guys have a lot of thoughts about some of the stuff I just blabbed on about for a while. So definitely leave a comment, and thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.